Greetings, everyone. I'd like to thank all the assistants for your presence here in this 56th ASOCOPI conference. My name is Tatiana Chiquito. I have a master's in literature and I have been a teacher for 10 years for private schools in Medellin. I was an English school coordinator for SILEX program from the Language Center of Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana, and I am currently a professor at the same university at the Faculty of Education, and I coordinate the Masters in Literature from the same university. Today, I'll be presenting culturally relevant teaching and literary picnics. I'll start with some conceptual backgrounds on what is culturally relevant teaching, its connection with culture and second language learning. Then I'll present what is SILEX and literary picnics to end up with students' experiences and what we as teachers need to focus on using this pedagogy. One of the biggest challenges in language teaching today is how to negotiate English language instruction with the different cultural aspects of the communities our language teachers serve. This is particularly crucial in Colombia, where we continue recognizing our diversity and the need for more just and caring pedagogical practices. This is the spirit behind seeking culturally relevant teaching and pedagogies as stated by Geneva Gay and Latin Billings. So let's start with some background and conceptual questions. So, what's culture and what is culturally relevant pedagogy? So, as we can read here in this slide, we have two definitions of culture, one by Gertz, which is, he states that culture is an historically transmitted pattern of meanings embodied in symbols, a system of inherited conceptions expressed in symbolic forms of means of which men communicate, perpetuate, and develop their knowledge about their attitudes toward life. Moreover, Chen states that culture is critical side of social action intervention, where power relations are both established and potentially unsettled. Um, so we also need to take into account what Edward Hall developed in his cultural iceberg model. So what we can see is the visible culture, our behavior, symbols, artifacts, the traditions, customs, language, what's visible, what is the tip of the iceberg. And what we cannot see, it's beliefs, attitudes, perceptions, assumptions, values, everything that is beneath, right? Culture. So we can say also that culture is a point of reference, a dynamic system, a factor in how we behave and think, and influence in our teaching and learning, as stated by Geneva Gay in 2010. So, but what is culturally relevant pedagogy? Culturally responsive pedagogy, culturally relevant pedagogy is something that acknowledges, responds, and celebrates cultural aspects in students from all cultures and backgrounds. CRP invites teachers, educators, and policymakers to attend students' academic needs to engage students and teachers into a culture of academic excellence for moving toward critical consciousness. So, the idea behind culturally relevant teaching and pedagogies entails developing curricular and instructional initiatives that recognize the importance of validating students' cultural resilience in all aspects of learning. The search for culturally relevant practices, therefore, aims to encourage teachers to be more aware of them and make it practical in within the classrooms. So, some of the activities that we can use in the classrooms are discussion, debates, problem solving. We need to allow our students to choose activities, and from different activities, from different projects. We need to talk about real world issues using newspapers, social media, and teachers, we need to create our self-awareness as well. We need to examine the impact on students and family, the impact of the activity that we do and develop in our classrooms. We need to include diverse cultures in our planning, and we need to start from students own backgrounds. So to empower students, teachers need to connect with them with culturally relevant literature where students can see themselves in. These kind of book fostering students the understanding of cultural elements and how these enriching experiences, enrich themselves as beings and as part of communities, and regardless their exposure to diversity. For the past 5 years, SILEX, that stands for Sistema Integrado de Lenguas, Culturas y Saberes, a language teaching program from the Language Center of Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana in Medellin, has developed an educational project called Literary Picnic. In the program, they work with small groups, 5 hours per week with all grades, and English is used inside and outside the classrooms as part of living languages and cultures as a tool and as a learning environment. And they foster different projects to use the language naturally at school. One of these projects is properly literary picnics. So how does a literary picnic work? We ask our students expectations on what stories they would like to read, and they often answer that they would like to read about Colombian culture, Colombian myths and legends, and stories about what they hear from their grandparents as well. So we use variety of books and topics, not only the ones suggested by some editorial houses. We don't focus only in language during these literary picnics. And we during the process we ask questions to our to students based on diversity, culture, and what they can see in the books that we read. For example, these are some of the books used in the literary picnic in which we can see applied CRP in literature. They focus on language and culture, but moreover on diversity and how the awareness and becoming aware of this diversity, it's helping students being aware at the same time of their own context as well. Hammond, in her book Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, also states that there are five important aspects within language, which are rigor, realness, language acquisition, relevance, and relationship. To ensure rigor, we inspire each and every student to actively comprehend and communicate in the target language, even though we know that language acquisition is a process, it's implicit within the process in the project of literary picnics. We let students communicate in the class in real world context and that which are interest for them. And we don't force them to use the language at the first. Because language classes are focused on communication. We don't focus on grammar or vocabulary explicitly. So this helps us to build that relationship among teachers and students that provide content of the language as well. So some of the questions that we can ask ourselves by preparing literary picnics is, how do I contribute to develop a community of students who feel respected? How do I offer meaningful choices to promote a positive attitude? How does the learning experience challenge my students? And how do I promote the awareness in my students for them to perceive the world? So I know that answering these questions it might be difficult, but it's not impossible. And these are one of the biggest challenges that we as teachers need to face as well, while becoming aware on becoming a CRP teacher as well. So now I'd like to focus on some students' experiences with literary picnics and some creations done by students. So students like and love literary picnics because they read about cultures. They love literary picnics because my teachers read to me in English the book I want. And also because they can talk about Colombian stories but in English. And moreover, they can create their stories in English as well. Here you have some examples and some students' creations on, for example, El Cura Sin Cabeza, translated by a student, Colombian slang, and typical cultural sentences that we use here, and how does that mean in English? How would be the translation and the explanation of it in English? So, as conclusions, I'd like once again make some emphasis on the importance of helping our students in becoming aware on diversity, which is not just belonging to another country, but is more about any context. In the end, being aware of diversity is more caring. It is a lifetime work to make language classroom more just and welcoming to our students. Language classes also need to be more just and welcoming. We need to stop thinking in grammar and vocabulary or only speaking in English, making our students afraid of the language. They need to understand that it's okay to talk even in Spanglish. Spanglish. It's a learning process in which they will become more familiar with the language, talking about things they are motivated about. So coordinators and university need to foster CRP in teachers and preserve these teachers as well to create a meaningful and caring learning environment. Because unfortunately, as Nieto states, teachers are too often swallowed up by a system that is inequitable and hegemonic, that replicates power and privilege, and that rewards students according to their identities. So it was a pleasure for me presenting this pedagogical experience. I'd like to thank you so much for listening and being here. Plus, here I have my email and social media to keep track on what I'll keep researching on CRP and literature. And anytime you can write um, to me and keep in touch. Goodbye and thank you.